What if I told you there's a completely different version of Elden Ring you never got to see? If I told you that, I would be lying. Because there's actually 3 different versions. From broken weapons to impossible questlines and even entirely new endings. Elden Ring has so much cut content that it could almost make up an entirely different game. Today I'm gonna uncover every single piece of cut content, explain it, figure out why it was cut, and what the game would look like if it wasn't removed. But wait a minute, what could I possibly mean by there being 3 buried versions of Elden Ring? Well, aside from the base game, there's the 1.0 version, the network test, and the Age of the Unforged. These 3 versions will be the layers of cut content that we delve into. The Age of the Unforged is the development version of Elden Ring that no player ever got to see. The only way we can understand cut content from here is picking clues from the code and trying to piece together a vision of what was. And what we usually put together paints a completely different picture from the game we have today. This is our deepest layer of cut content. Then there's a 1.0 version, our highest layer of cut content. This is a version that shipped on disc, but most players never got to experience it because of the day 1 patch that rolled out and changed the 1.0 version to the one we have today. 1.0 was largely similar to the Elden Ring we know and love, but there were a few changes that had super interesting gameplay and lore applications. We can get access to this version by installing Elden Ring on disc without internet, or by installing this really well done mod. And the middle layer of cut content is the network test, the pre-launch version that only approved players got their hands on. This version holds a lot of insanely impactful cut content, the kind of stuff that would change the gameplay and lore in massive ways, to the point it's unrecognizable from the current game. And one of the biggest network test cut content was the starter classes. In the network test, there was an Enchanted Knight and a Bloody Wolf class. The Enchanted Knight started with the Winged Spear, which is just called the Spear in the current game, and the Vanguard class starts with it now. There was also the Carrion Glintstone Shield, now called the Carrion Knight Shield in the current game, and it used to have the Sorcerer Hunter Ash of War, and now has Carrion Retaliation. It also has the Glintstone Staff, a staff that boosts Carrion sword sorceries, which is super strong, because you also start with the Carrion Piercer, a solid sword sorcery that complements the staff, and Glintstone Pebble, which is the weakest ranged option but it's better than nothing, and you were wearing an entire Carrion Knight armor set. It's so sad that they cut this class. This would have given players an option to start right away with a melee magic build. I have no doubt this could have been one of the most popular classes if it wasn't cut. On the other hand, the Bloody Wolf had the Bloody Wolf armor set. Who would have guessed? And the Bastard Sword, which would have been the first time in Soulsborne history you could start with a greatsword. Then the Iron Round Shield, which just sucks. It didn't even have full damage negation, but you probably would have two-handed the Bastard Sword anyways. This is a class I think can stay cut. The Bastard Sword was insanely impressive to start with, and strength users would be given a class they could go with so they can start their build right off the bat, but the shield just wasn't it, and the Vagabond is clearly better. I can see why they removed these classes. Even though the Enchanted Knight would have been awesome, it seems like these classes were more about setting you on a specific build for your game, when FromSoft has always taken the approach of classes being more of a light suggestion. If these would have stayed in the game, it would have changed the early game completely. You would start out with a solid build, so you would explore and experiment less. Tight classes like these would mess with the very DNA of the game, but let's just be happy we didn't lose any of the armor sets from these classes, because I can't say the same about the Ragged set. The Ragged set is this crazy cool sort of makeshift cloak that looks super sick and nomadic. You can even throw a cape on it. In the original 1.0 version of the game, which you can still technically play, you would progress the game till you kill Godric, and then you can buy it from Gostock. Technically, it was added later into Shadow of the Erdtree as Egon's set, but Egon's set will always be a fraud, for as long as the Ragged set lives in our hearts. But who's the guy wearing the Ragged set? That's Reeling Rico, or just Rico, or Monk Jico. Why the hell does this guy have 3 names? He's the one you were supposed to get the Ragged armor from, and an entirely cut NPC. And not only that, he was also connected to what could be one of the biggest questlines in the game. There isn't a whole lot we know about Rico, but I think this voice line of him sums it up pretty good. As you surely know, my compeer, I am but a humble man of cloth, and I must profess. The study of alcohol is but another form of worship. Oh, Saint Trina, my faith is in alcohol. and the hearts of men. Yeah, Rico, we get it. You like drinking and driving. Me too. This guy's questline starts with him telling you about Dream Brew, an alcohol previously only reserved for the demigods. But he knows how to make it, and he offers to share it with you if you get the ingredients. Once you agree, he gives you the St. Trina crystal ball item. You're gonna have to use it to interact with sleeping animals around the map. You can tell they're sleeping by the fact that they have this little fog over their faces. You only need to find 2 sleeping animals to have enough. And once you return back to him, he gives you your much anticipated nectar. You can give Dream Brew to NPCs for them to give you their deepest and darkest secrets. Yeah, I think I see why this was cut from the game. You were essentially getting people drunk to get more information out of them. There are some ethical concerns there. And added on, if this was still in the game, it would only really serve a story purpose, which isn't the main reason people play Elden Ring. And the people that do care would probably just watch the hidden dialogues on YouTube and never do the quest. On the other hand, something that's always going to be worth doing is subscribing to Through the Fog. Subscribing nets you consistent, amazing Soulsborne content. Also consider leaving a like if you're enjoying this video. You can also drop a super thanks if you want to make sure we see your message. Any amount is appreciated. Now back on topic. When you pick up the Drake armor, there's a gigantic difference in the description of it between the current game and the 1.0 version. The 1.0 version said it was the armor worn by the dragon tracker, Andre. And as you can see, current description has nothing to say about our dragon tracker. We literally have no info on this guy, which pisses me off so much, because you're telling me we could have had the John Wick of dragons in this game, and they just scrapped it? We could have had 2 curse you, Bale level speeches. But it doesn't take a rocket scientist to guess what role this guy would have had in the game if he wasn't removed. Given the fact that Placidusax is insanely hidden, I can take a damn good guess that Andre's questline would have been about tracking and killing all the open world dragons, and eventually ending in the climax of finding the Dragon Lord himself and taking down Placidusax with Andre. It actually sounds so sick, it makes me wish it was in the game so bad. But something that we have zero info on and I can't really speculate on from the Unforged version is the entwining umbilical cord. But good thing this wiki has what it does. But what the hell does change the demeanor of wearer's actions even mean? This might have some effect when talking to the NPCs? Maybe if you aggroed them, you can make them friendly with this? But it's a talisman, so that doesn't make sense. It really seems like an item like that would be more of a consumable. But one thing I noticed is that it kind of looks like the Treyarch logo. So maybe we're getting a Ranny skin in Call of Duty. I don't even know anymore. I can guess this was removed because the Unforged version probably had more ambitious plans for NPC interactions. If it wasn't cut, there may have been some sort of karma system that would determine your demeanor when talking to people. Or maybe there was some affinity system being worked on. I'm not quite sure. If you have any ideas on what it could be, drop it in the comments. But forget about that, because they designed a thong for Fia in Unforged. Yeah, in the game files, dataminers found a piece of armor called the Deathbed Smalls. I can't believe FromSoft would take this from us. We need the Fia Hot Coffee questline in Elden Ring 2 now. But yeah, you can get this with mods and put it on, because I know you people are into that. FromSoft also cut the Ragged Lion Cloth, which is just a lion cloth, but ragged as you can tell from the name. I don't really get why this was even created. If a male Tarnished wanted to be skin inclusive, they could have just worn Fia's thong. And now, let's cover a piece of cut content that's not so lighthearted from the Unforged version. The Burial Crow Letter was a piece of cut content meant to flesh out Kale and his caravan buddies. This quest does so much for the characterization and lore of this game. I think it's such a shame that it didn't make it to the full game. If I had to guess why it was cut, I would say it's because this quest doesn't really follow the usual FromSoft design philosophy. FromSoft likes making their lore a pretty cryptic puzzle. This quest is so upfront with the story that it had to tell, that FromSoft probably thought it was too straightforward a way of figuring out this lore. This is a rare Miyazaki L, because this quest line is awesome. When talking to Kale at the church, you can tell he's very caring of his nomadic merchant friends, and even tells you story of the Great Caravan, a place where all these merchants live. He apparently lost it and has been searching for it. Then after beating Godric, he tells you about his intent to leave and continue searching for the caravan. Soon after that, in the place of Kale, you find a message from him, telling you he's headed to Liurnia, and he hopes to see you again. Keep progressing through the game as normal, and you'll find Kale once again near the scenic Isle Grace. He's clearly pretty happy and surprised to see you, and asks if you've seen a burial crow nearby, with a letter attached to its claw. After exploring for a bit, you can find the crow sitting in front of this cliff face, and you get the burial crow's letter from him. It was actually pointed out by Sekiro Dubby, the community member that restored this content, that these birds carrying letters to the merchant explains why the buyable notes have colored feathers attached to them. These little answers we find from data mining is so cool. Once you sell the letter to Kale, you can ask him about it, and he tells you that the letter is from his people, and it might be the breakthrough he needed to find the caravan. Then leaves you another goodbye message in the spot he was, saying he's heading to Lanedale. You find him again at Lanedale in front of this crashed carriage, and he tells you about how the letter is leading him to the underground part of Lanedale. And then there's actually a second burial crow letter you get. It doesn't seem like there was a coded way to actually obtain it, but you can give it to him, and he learns from it that the way under Lanedale is through the well. He speaks about how excited he is to find his way back to the caravan, and speaks of the wonders there will be to trade, a bout of enthusiasm that won't last long. He leaves you another message, and you follow him to the subterranean shunning grounds. On the way, you see countless bodies of his fellow caravan members, and then you find him.
Did you see what they did to my ancestors? The whole clan buried alive, sick, maddened, husks of themselves. You heard their moans. They're hardly human anymore. They think we worship the three fingers, that we called the maddening sickness down upon them. Well, if that's what they expect from us, then that's what they shall get from us! The world of Grace and his people should have been content to see us sink between the cracks, but to have intruded upon our solace, having broken us upon their whims, I'll never forgive any of you. I should apologize to you. It's my fault that we stumbled into this mess. I'm sorry.
Even though he was so angry at the fate of his people, he still apologized to you. Kale was someone who lived his life with humility till the end, and the fact that this is cut content is a crime. If you get burned by the frenzied flame, he will follow suit and wish the world to burn, but he isn't a good host for the flames. So the only thing that gets destroyed is himself. If this stayed in the game, I imagine everyone would be going Frenzied Flame every playthrough, and Kale would be everyone's favorite character. I know after getting through this, he's mine. But on the other hand, let's just be happy that Kale doesn't ever have to suffer like this in the real game, even if we don't get to understand him to the same extent. Alright, let's bring the mood up a little by talking about our next piece of cut content. Time to touch on the red insignia and Irina's necklace from 1.0. Irina's necklace is functionally the same thing as Irina's letter. You get it from Irina and you give it to Edgar, and then you kill the misbegotten and you find Edgar over a dead Irina, just like the base game. If this stayed in the game, nothing would have changed at all. This quest might have played a little different from what we know today, but it really just seems like Irina's necklace is a reskin of Irina's letter. And the name Irina's necklace is something that the community just came up with, because the actual name of this necklace was taken out of the files. It also looks a lot like Raya's necklace. Speaking of Raya, if you help her get her necklace and get the Volcano Manor invitation, you have the replacement for our next cut item. The way you used to get into the Volcano Manor was the red insignia, which would have been given to you by Tanith, the Manor proprietress, instead of Raya. The red insignia is actually a symbol of being a recusant. So in the original version of the game, you had to join their faction to get into the Volcano Manor. Looking at the design of this, you can actually see Riker going around a tree, and the frame is made of two snakes doing a little kiss. But this item wasn't entirely replaced, because if you take a look at the drawing room key, you can see that it uses the same design as the red insignia. There was probably a more ambitious vision behind the Volcano Manor that we never got to see. If this stayed in the game, maybe the red insignia would have been one of the Covenant items, and Covenants would have returned from Dark Souls 3. But Irina's necklace and the red insignia didn't change the gameplay flow at all. I can't say the same for our next piece of cut content, because in Elden Ring's 1.0 version, item farming really wasn't necessary. Merchants sold infinite of everything you needed. Patches sold infinite gold pickled foulfoots, so you can have an insane rune buff in every scenario you want, considering the fact they're so easy to get. And the Mistwood merchant also sold unlimited arrows. I can understand why they removed these. They absolutely destroyed the item economy. If you could still buy unlimited gold foulfoots, why would you not just pop one before beating every single boss? It would make early game leveling absurdly fast and probably ruin the balance of the game. And it's also super important for the game that you have to farm for unique arrows. I think they could offer unlimited of these in the late game, but getting them early to mid game is just insane. But what's even more insane is the fact that one of the coolest quests in Elden Ring is unforged cut content. And that's Asimi's questline. This could have brought numerous different features to the game, and ways to become stronger in the lands between. This quest is mostly finished, so I legitimately have no idea why it was cut. And I think this needs to be added back, because it's amazing. This quest revolves around a silver tear that has learned about and fears death. A creature that reached a level of consciousness no one intended for it. I'll let her speak for herself.
Please wait. Proud, tarnished warrior. Before you kill me, let me speak. I can aid you. Please, just hear me out. Thank you for listening. I am Asimi. My true form is that of a silver tear. I am a simple being who can assume the shapes of other living things. But now, I've gained knowledge. I speak and ponder and live in fear of death. Oh, mighty, tarnished warrior. I beg of you, let me keep the life I've been granted. In exchange, I offer you power. Now, set your lips upon me and breathe in deep. I will live inside of you and grant you strength untold.
She begs you not to kill her and makes an offer. After the encounter, you get the item Asimi, silver tear. It's stated that Asimi has infected the Tarnished, and that this infection grants us power, since we're the host of Asimi. She'll hang inside of you, not really doing much until you reach an eternal city, and then she begs you to explore it, so she can discover the ancient wonders of the stars, whatever that means. Once you get to the city, she will ask you to look for a chalice so you can drink out of it. She says this will allow her to grant us further strength. We then have to find both chalices, one in each eternal city. Once you drink from these chalices, it evolves her from her previous form to an exact clone of you. And before she leaves, she tells you that she will live the same way that you would have, which doesn't really make me feel any better about a clone of me walking around, but okay. You find her later in the game, and she says if you didn't find her, you both could have become Elden Lord. But since you did find her, she has to kill you and become Elden Lord herself. I don't really understand that logic, but you end up fighting her anyways. And once you kill her, she feels fear of the unknown for the first time.
Dying. So this is fear. I'm glad, my Lord Host, worthiest of lords.
Anta, the guy that put this together, thinks that if this was still in the game, it would be how you got mimicked here instead of the mimic boss fight. And he's probably right. This would have been a way more cool and satisfying way of getting it. You can't just cheese her so easily, because she clones before you even know that you're gonna fight her. And this deep storyline about her becoming the most human in death is so interesting and rewarding. This quest brings up the question, what is identity? And more importantly, is it fear that makes us human? And a quest as huge as that isn't even the biggest thing that was cut, because they removed an entire ending from the Unforged version. Yeah, in the DLC there's a completely different ending you can get, where you side with Miquella and Radahn, called the Age of Compassion. If this was kept in the game, you would assist Miquella rise to godhood, and create a world where all beings thrived. It would change the lore of the game completely, and you may have been able to actually save the lands between. Walking into the promised consort fight, you would have the option to skip the fight altogether and side with Miquella and Radahn. This explains a lot, because loads of people really had problems with the Shadow of the Erdtree ending. It seemed abrupt and rushed, and this gives us the insight that it was. If they didn't throw this out, we would have an actually solid ending to the DLC. The community would probably be happy. Good thing fellow Tarnished were able to restore it. Go ahead and give it a listen.
Lord of the Old Order, let us go together. I hereby swear to every living being and every living soul. Now comes the age of our Eden, a 1,000-year voyage, guided by compassion. Beginning here, love encompasses all. No living thing will be denied. No deed censured. I am ready to embrace the whole of it. Let us go together, Radahn, my promised consort.
They probably just cut this due to time restraint. You can pretty clearly see this isn't fully coded, and actually, most of Shadow of the Erdtree was just reusing cut content. For example, the Twin Blade of Abundance and Decay was cut from Unforged and later added into the DLC as the Euphoria. Thank God we didn't lose the badass light spear. This thing tears through bosses and is one of the best weapons in the game. If this stayed cut, we would have lost easily one of the most aura-filled Ash of Wars. And there were a lot of other pieces of cut content that were just strange decisions to cut. When you're just about to get to Astel and the Grand Closeteer, there's a completely removed version of the Ancestral Follower. This version is covered in Scarlet Rot, and deals a lot of it whenever it attacks you. I really have to ask why this is cut. It's fully coded and functional, and the application of it in the 1.0 version is just fine. But that's not all, because in a flash of brilliance, From Software created a genius new set of armor, the Millicent's Robe, which is literally just a traveler's set with some blood on it. I don't know if they were trying to pull a Dead by Daylight, or they made Millicent's Robe first, but there was just no reason to cut this. They also cut Iji's confession for absolutely no reason. In the 1.0 version, after Iji died, they left a confession on their corpse. This letter reveals Iji's guilt about sealing Blythe away, and strangely enough, reveals that Iji is a girl. Yeah, if this was kept in, Iji would be a woman. I don't know how that would work with his current voice actor, but it's 2025, so who even cares? But things like this were awesome ways to add more lore to the game, and got nuked for seemingly no reason. But that's not the case for all cut content. Like the 1.0 version of Melania, that had a second waterfowl dance where she's walking forward. If that stayed in, even Let Me Solo Her's career would have been ended by her. That can stay cut. Keep that out of my game. And our next piece of cut content could have been the best questline in any Soulsborne game. Nearby the seaside ruins, you can find an NPC called Gilbert, in a place where Yura usually is. He asks you about the Crucible Knight Ordovis, saying there's a grudge against him. Going to the Bloodhound Everjail, you'll find the place that originally held the Crucible Knight Ordovis fight, but it's replaced with the Bloodhound Knight in modern Elden Ring. Upon approaching the Everjail, you were able to summon Gilbert, and when defeating Ordovis, you can go back to Gilbert, and he speaks about your fight together as if it was a dream. We find out here that he's serving the God of Vengeance, and these grudges held against others are the will of the God of Vengeance. Whenever anyone does something wrong, if their victim prays to the God of Vengeance, Gilbert is who's sent to exact that revenge. If you go around killing merchants, Gilbert will eventually invade and hunt you down to get retribution for the fallen innocents. Yep, Elden Ring had its very own police system, which I really think we need back, because all of us go around killing the merchants for their ball bearings. It's a huge issue. Back to Gilbert's quest. He states his next target is Godric. Godric has taken so many people's arms to graft to himself that he caught the attention of the Redeemers. If you go to Stormvale and get to the Godric fight, you can see that the summon for Gilbert and Vyke is there in front. We'll get to who Vyke is later. You summon both of them, and once you defeat Godric, that's all. The game files sadly don't give us more insight on the role Gilbert could have played later in the game. If he was kept in, we could have had some sort of morality system and one of the best quest lines. The start of the game would be a completely different experience. But what's probably the most important piece of cut content, a character that you know even if you don't think you do, is Vyke. But before I tell you about him, let's uncover the last cut items. These are another case where there wasn't any reason for them to be removed. I'm honestly scratching my head as to why these were removed. The first item was actually so fully developed that it was used in the trailer. This cut item was called Miranda's Prayer. It got reworked into the aspects of the Crucible Bloom. But man, it sucks we lost another good tool. The last cut item is Lucent Baldachin's Blessing. I definitely mispronounced that. It's supposed to offer protection, so it probably operates just like Baldachin's Blessing. It might even have been reworked to Baldachin's Blessing. But one interesting thing with Lucent is that it's a consumable that can't be undone. So that raises a question. Was this supposed to be a key item that gives you a permanent buff to your character? And what kind of buff could this possibly give you if it was permanent? I have no idea. And we have no info of what the item actually does. So I can't really speak on what it would be like if it was added back. But maybe we'll see it added back later in a different capacity. Now for Vyke, the most important piece of cut content. Vyke is the person on the game cover. He held the most important role for the game's marketing. And in the base game, he's massively cut down. We can mostly only speculate. There has been some stuff found in the code, but not much. It's clear just from the way the marketing handled him, he was supposed to play a huge part in the game, and that reflects in what little info the player base has found of him. This is concept art of what Vyke looks like. You can see his armor is melting. It looks so insanely cool, and some of you might actually recognize him, and that's because Vyke is in the game as a boss fight, Roundtable Knight Vyke. But one look at the code makes it obvious that Vyke was supposed to be much more than he is. We have things like the fact he was able to be summoned for the Godric fight along Gilbert, and Gostock also mentions that Vyke follows into Stormvale close behind you. He was supposed to have a whole quest line in which you work your way cutting down demigod after demigod. If he wasn't removed, we might have had the biggest quest in the entire game. Vyke could have been right by your side, seeking to also become Elden Lord. And in the end, when there's only one throne, two lowly tarnished, who once worked together, would have to fight to the death so either of them can become king. Because one thing that I failed to mention is that in the current game's lore, it said that Vyke was closest to becoming Elden Lord, and got devoured by frenzied flame right before reaching the crown. If he wasn't removed, the game would be almost unrecognizable. Because Vyke is our equal. His existence would have made it so that we're not the only one capable of killing gods. But we'll never know what that game could have looked like. I guess the real Elden Ring is the friends we made along the way. We may not have any reason or hint as to why these were cut, but let's hope we can see them added on later in a different form. If you liked the video, leave a like and subscribe. And click the video on screen to see the most hidden items in Elden Ring. And until next time, I'll see you through the fog.